The stars had turned to fire long before Elias Ward hit the ground. His vessel had screamed through the atmosphere, its hull torn apart by enemy cannons, its engines coughing smoke until they became nothing but sparks against the night. He had strapped himself into the pilot's chair, whispering no prayers, only curses. A soldier didn't pray, not when command had already betrayed him. He rode the crash like he had ridden every mission, jaw clenched, refusing to scream. When the ship struck the volcanic surface, the world shook, and the sky became a broken mirror of falling metal. When Elias crawled out from the wreckage, his body was bleeding, his ribs cracked, and his left arm half dead with numbness. Yet he stood. The ground stretched out like a graveyard of fire and ash, black rocks glowing with veins of molten light. Smoke curled from fissures, sulfur burned his lungs, and in every direction he saw nothing but wasteland. He thought, for a heartbeat, that he was alone and forgotten, just another discarded soldier thrown onto a forgotten battlefield. But soldiers were bred to survive. He searched the wreckage, pulled a ration pack, a blade, and a beacon with half its circuits fried. It was enough for another day, maybe two. The wind howled like a beast through the jagged ridges as he stumbled forward, searching for shelter. That was when he saw it rising from the fog of ash and flame, the silhouette of a citadel carved into black stone. Its spires were cracked, its gates broken, but it still stood, defiant against storms and time. He limped toward it, every step grinding pain through his bones. The gates yawned open like the mouth of some ancient predator. Inside, shadows stretched across ruined halls, banners torn to shreds, and carvings in alien script glowed faintly along the walls. He thought it empty. He thought it safe. He was wrong. The strike came without warning, swift, silent, precise. A blade kissed his throat before his hand even reached for his weapon. The figure moved out of the shadows, tall, lithe, armored in dark silver that shimmered like oil on water. Her eyes burned bright green, her long hair cascading like a river of midnight, and her face was carved with sharp beauty that carried both royalty and exile. Another hunter sent to finish me. Her voice was low, dangerous, yet threaded with something like sorrow. The blade pressed harder, a single drop of his blood staining the edge. Elias did not flinch. His hand stayed raised, but his eyes locked onto hers. "If I were here to kill you," he rasped, his throat raw from smoke, "you'd already be dead." Her eyes narrowed, studying him like prey that refused to bow. Most men begged, she knew that. Most humans trembled when faced with a Valorian blade. But this one, he stood as though he had nothing left to lose. His uniform was scorched, his body broken, yet his stare was fire itself. "You are human," she said with distaste. "Your kind bends, always, not me." His words were sharp, carved from iron. For a moment, the air between them was silence, heavy and dangerous. The halls of the citadel seemed to breathe, the faint glow of the glyphs on the walls growing brighter, as if they hungered for violence. Elias thought she might strike, end him with one smooth motion, but then the ground itself shuddered, the citadel groaned, as the volcanic world reminded them both of its fury. A tremor rolled beneath their feet, dust and ash raining from the ceiling. Outside, a roar like thunder split the air, the beginnings of a seismic storm. The walls rattled, and her blade shifted from his throat to brace against falling stone. Without a word, she pushed him aside. He stumbled, but did not fall. Together they staggered deeper into the citadel as the storm howled outside, tearing through the wasteland with a force that could strip flesh from bone. The roof trembled, flames flickered, and shadows danced across their faces as they found shelter in a collapsed chamber. Elias sank against a wall, clutching his ribs. She stood across from him, her weapon still in hand, her eyes never leaving his face. The storm sealed them together, enemies forced into a fragile truce. "You should have begged," she said finally. her voice cool as the stone around them. Elias lifted his head, his mouth bleeding but curved into something close to a smile. And you should have killed me. For the first time, something flickered in her gaze, curiosity, maybe respect, but also recognition. This human carried the same fire that burned within her, the fire that had led to her exile, the fire that refused to kneel. Two strangers, two outcasts, thrown together by ruin and storm. Neither would bow, neither would break. The storm outside raged, but inside the citadel, another storm had already begun. The storm outside did not end quickly. It clawed at the walls of the citadel for hours. Each gust of ash-laden wind howling like a wounded beast, each tremor shaking dust loose from the cracked ceiling. Elias sat in silence, forcing himself to breathe slowly, his body screaming with every inhale. Across the chamber, Serenya Valis stood like a statue, blade still in hand, eyes burning in the dim light of the glowing glyphs. Neither spoke, but the silence was louder than the storm. At last Elias broke it. "You're not here by accident," he said hoarsely, dragging himself upright despite the fire in his ribs. "Nobody chooses a wasteland for shelter." Her expression barely shifted, but there was the faintest flicker of something in her eyes, amusement, perhaps contempt. "Sharp tongue for a broken man." "Sharp enough to know exile when I see it," he answered, meeting her gaze. His voice was tired but steady, the kind of steadiness born from years of combat. "A woman with armor, that fine eyes, that proud you're no common soldier. You were sent here, banished." She moved before he could blink, the blade once more flashing near his throat. The storm's glow cast silver across her face as she leaned close. "Do not speak of what you do not understand, human." But Elias only stared at her, unflinching. His neck bled from the edge of her weapon, but his voice did not tremble. "Then make me understand." For the briefest heartbeat, her breath caught. No one had ever demanded answers from her, not in exile, not in shame. She pulled back slowly, lowering the blade, but not sheathing it. "Your kind fights with fire you cannot control. Perhaps that is why you burn so fast." Before he could reply, a sound split the air, low, metallic, echoing through the ruined halls. Elias froze, every instinct sharpened. Serenya's head turned, her eyes narrowing. The sound came again, closer now, like steel scraping against stone. "They come when the storms rise," she whispered, her tone colder, sharper. "The guardians of this grave world." Out of the shadows crawled the first of them, towering, skeletal constructs of metal fused with bone, their jaws opening with mechanical shrieks. Their eyes glowed the same eerie green as the glyphs on the walls, as though the citadel itself had birthed them. Elias cursed under his breath, dragging his salvaged blade from his belt. His arm trembled, his body weak, but his eyes shone with the same fire as before. Serenya stepped forward, her silver weapon glowing faintly, her stance elegant yet fierce. The creatures moved faster than expected, their claws scraping sparks from the floor. Elias lunged, slamming his blade into the joint of one beast's leg, twisting until metal shrieked. The construct toppled, but another struck him across the chest, sending him crashing against the wall. Pain tore through him, but he refused to stay down. Serenya moved like a storm-given flesh, her blade sliced arcs of silver light, cleaving through limbs and necks. Her strength was undeniable. But she faltered for an instant, when three of the beasts surrounded her at once. Elias rose, blood dripping from his lips, and hurled a piece of broken stone into the glowing mouth of one creature. It shrieked, stumbling back, and Serenya seized the opening to strike. Their movements were separate, uncoordinated, yet bound by the same instinct to fight, to burn, to survive. When the last beast fell in a cascade of sparks and molten fragments, Elias leaned against the wall, his chest heaving. Serenya stood over the wreckage, her shoulders rising and falling with sharp breaths. Their eyes met across the battlefield of broken machines. You fight like one who has nothing to lose, she said, voice softer than before. Maybe I don't, Elias answered, forcing a crooked smile despite the pain. But I still fight. Something shifted in her gaze. Respect, reluctant but undeniable. She sheathed her blade at last and stepped closer, her presence towering over him. For the first time, she knelt, examining the blood on his arm. Without a word, she tore a strip from her own cloak and bound his wound. The gesture was not gentle, but it was not cruel either. Elias watched her, his lips twitching. Didn't think royalty tied bandages. Her eyes flashed, and for a moment he thought she might strike him again. But instead, she said quietly, exiles learn many things. The storm outside began to fade, its roar softening into a distant moan. The citadel, however, seemed alive now, its glyphs glowing brighter after the battle, pulsing like veins of fire. Elias noticed, but Serenya said nothing, her face shadowed by memory, as silence returned. A fragile thread of something unspoken stretched between them. Not trust, not yet, but recognition. Two flames, both unwanted, both unbroken, both burning, brighter against the dark. And in that recognition lay danger, because fires that meet do not fade. They consume. The storm had left the world hushed, but inside the citadel, silence was never safe. The glowing glyphs on the walls pulsed faintly, as if the battle with the metal beasts had awakened something old and watchful. Elias sat with his back against the cracked stone, his breath ragged, his ribs aching with every movement. Serenya moved through the chamber like a shadow in silver, her blade at her side, her eyes scanning the broken arches, as though expecting the walls themselves to attack. Those things, Elias said finally, his voice rough but steady. You called them guardians. Her head turned slightly, green eyes catching the faint glow. They are not alive. They are remnants. War machines built long before your kind ever reached the stars. This world was once a battlefield, where gods played at conquest. Now it is a grave, and I am chained to it. Her words carried weight. Elias did not yet understand, but he felt the truth in them. She had not chosen exile here. She had been condemned to it. He studied her, the proud line of her jaw, the defiance in every word. She spoke like a queen, stripped of her throne, but never of her fire. You wear your exile like armor, Elias murmured, but armor cracks. Her gaze sharpened instantly, but he did not look away. He had seen men break under interrogation, under fire, under betrayal. But she stood unbroken. That was why he pressed. You know nothing of me, human, she said coldly, but there was no venom in it, only tired steel. I was raised to command legions, to carry the bloodline forward. When I refused their chain, they stripped me of everything. I became a shadow they could discard. Elias let the words settle. He thought of his own command, of orders that had sent him into impossible wars, of comrades left behind as expendable pawns. His fists clenched, and his voice was low when he replied, Then we are the same, different crowns, same chains. For a moment, the storm outside seemed to echo them, a distant growl in the horizon. She studied him longer than before, as though searching for weakness in his words, but instead of weakness, she found a reflection. Their silence was broken by a sound deeper in the citadel, low hum, vibrating through the stone itself. Elias pushed himself up, ignoring the pain that screamed through his body. Serenya's hand went instinctively to her blade. The glyphs along the walls flared brighter, spilling emerald light into the chamber. They are waking, she whispered. Elias frowned. The guardians? No. Her voice was sharp, urgent. Something older, something that should not answer our fire. The hum became a pulse, a heartbeat thrumming through the ruined halls. From the far corridor, shadows lengthened unnaturally, bending toward them like tendrils. Elias felt the hairs on his arms rise, the old soldier's instinct that whispered of traps and unseen enemies. We move, Serenya ordered, her voice tight, almost panicked. For the first time, he heard a crack in her composure. They pushed deeper into the citadel, past shattered statues of alien kings and corridors carved with forgotten wars. The pulse followed, growing louder, until Elias realized it was not in the stone, it was in him. Every beat rattled his bones, seared through his blood. "What is this place?" he demanded, sweat stinging his eyes. "A crown of ash," Serenya said, her breath unsteady. "Built by a race that bound fire itself into stone. My ancestors claimed it, then abandoned it. Now it sleeps, waiting for flames to wake it." Elias stumbled, his vision blurring. The glyphs blazed brighter with every step he took, as though the citadel was not responding to Serenya, but to him. Serenya saw it. She stopped, her hand tightening on her blade, her eyes wide with something between shock and fear, locked on him. "It answers you." He shook his head, pressing a hand against the wall. The glow beneath his fingers pulsed like a living vein. "I don't even know what it is." "It does not matter," she said fiercely. "The citadel has chosen you, and that is dangerous for both of us." The words struck him harder than any wound. Chosen. He was a soldier, discarded by his own people. A man who thought himself forgotten. Now this ruin, this exile's prison, responded to him as though he carried fire in his blood. The ground trembled beneath them. The air thickened, the corridors alive with whispers in a language he could not understand. Serenya grabbed his arm, her grip iron strong. "Listen to me, Elias Ward," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "If the citadel wakes, more than guardians will come. My brother will feel it. He will come to finish me. And you will be his prize." Her eyes burned with warning, but beneath it Elias saw something else: fear, not for herself, but for him. For the first time since his crash, he smiled without bitterness. "Let him come," he said, fire sparking in his voice. "I've fought every chain they put on me. I'll fight his too." She stared at him, stunned by the certainty in his tone. The citadel pulsed once more, brighter than ever, casting their faces in emerald light. Two flames stood together in the heart of a ruin that had waited centuries for them, and somewhere in the black sky above, beyond the storms, a fleet stirred. The night on the volcanic wasteland stretched like an endless wound. The citadel's walls, once silent stone, now pulsed with a green fire that seemed to breathe with Elias's heartbeat. The hum had settled into a rhythm steady, waiting, like an ancient drum calling warriors long dead to rise again. Elias leaned against a pillar, sweat cooling on his skin, while Serenya paced the chamber with a sharp, restless energy. "You still don't understand what has happened," she said finally, her voice like steel on stone. "This place was never meant for you. The citadel is Valorian. It should only answer Valorian blood." Elias looked up, his jaw tight. "And yet it answers me." Her eyes flickered, sharp and searching. "That is what frightens me." He pushed away from the pillar, ignoring the ache in his ribs. "You think I wanted this? I didn't ask for your walls to glow. I didn't ask for your monsters to crawl out of the dark. All I've done is fight to breathe another hour." Her expression shifted, almost softened, but before she could reply, the hum in the stone deepened. The floor beneath them shook violently, dust falling from the ceiling. Elias braced himself as cracks split the chamber. From the fissures, more guardians clawed their way out, metal fused with charred bone, their limbs twisted with ancient blades, their eyes burning the same emerald fire as the glyphs. Serenya drew her weapon in one fluid motion, her face lit with determination. "This is no accident," she said over the rising shrieks. "The citadel has decided to test you." Elias's laugh was short, bitter, defiant. "If it thinks I'll kneel, it chose wrong." The first guardian lunged, its talons screeching across stone. Elias met it head-on, his salvaged blade flashing. He struck low, driving the weapon into a joint, and yanked until sparks and molten ichor spilled across the floor. Serenya whirled. Beside him, her silver blade cutting arcs of deadly light, cleaving through constructs with elegance born of royal training. But there were too many. The chamber filled with shrieks and sparks, the air thick with smoke and burning metal. Elias fought with the raw fury of a man who refused to die, every strike born not of grace but of stubborn grit. He was bleeding again, his arm torn, but he pushed harder. Serenya stole glances at him between strikes. This soldier, human and fragile, fought as though he carried the rage of 10 legions. A guardian's claw raked across Elias's chest, sending him sprawling. Pain seared through him, but before the beast could finish him, Serenya's blade cut it clean in two. She grabbed his arm, yanking him to his feet. "Stand, Elias. The citadel is watching." Something in her tone lit another fire in him. He surged forward, blood dripping from his wounds, and hurled himself into the heart of the fight. He used everything: broken stone, fallen steel, even his fists, when the blade slipped from his hand. Every strike was wild, desperate, but unyielding. Serenya moved with him, their rhythm clashing, then blending, until their fight became one storm. The last guardian fell in a storm of sparks, its body collapsing into molten fragments that hissed on the stone floor. Elias dropped to one knee, gasping, his hands shaking from exhaustion. Serenya stood above him, her blade dripping with glowing ichor, her chest rising and falling with sharp breaths. The chamber was silent again, but the glyphs now burned brighter than fire. "They will not stop," Serenya whispered, her voice hoarse. "The more you resist, the more it will awaken." Elias spat blood, dragging himself upright, then let it. "I'm not afraid of stone and shadows." Her eyes widened, astonishment breaking through her usual mask of control. She stepped closer, studying him, her hand hovering near his face, but not touching. "I have seen many men break," she said softly, "but you carry fire as though it were your birthright." For a moment, the battle's fury gave way to silence thick with something else. Their gazes locked, and neither looked away. Elias, weary and bloodied, felt the weight of her presence like heat against his skin. Serenya, proud and unbowed, saw in him not weakness, but defiance that mirrored her own. The air between them tightened, humming like the citadel's pulse. But the moment shattered with the echo of distant thunder. Serenya's head snapped toward the broken archway, her expression darkening. "That is not the storm," she said. Elias frowned. "Then what?" She stepped closer, her voice sharp with certainty. "My brother will have felt this awakening. If his ships are near, they will come." Elias's body stiffened, every instinct sharpened. "Good," he said grimly, gripping his blade tighter, despite his trembling hands. "I've got a score to settle with commanders who think soldiers are disposable. Looks like your brother's about to learn the same lesson." Serenya's lips curved into something between a grimace and a smile. "You're either a fool, Elias Ward, or the kind of fire that could burn empires." The citadel's glow flared, spilling green light across their faces, as thunder rolled again from above, this time not from the sky, but from engines breaking through the atmosphere. The storm of war was no longer distant. It was here, and together, exile and soldier would stand in its fire. The sky above the volcanic wasteland split open with light. Through the roiling ash clouds, sleek shadows pierced downward Valorian warships, their engines like thunder, their hulls glowing, with violet markings that carved the night apart. The storm winds bent around them, as if even nature itself dared not touch their steel. Elias and Serenya stood at the broken archway of the citadel, the emerald glow of the glyphs washing their faces. "They've come," Serenya said, her voice cold, her jaw hardening. She did not need to name him. Her brother, the prince, who had taken the crown she had refused, was here to finish what exile had started. Elias's grip tightened on his blade. His wound still bled beneath the ragged cloth binding, but his eyes burned like coals. "Then we hold them," he said, as though it were the simplest truth. Serenya turned her gaze toward him, studying the torn soldier, his chest heaving, his body battered, yet his spirit unbroken. You would fight for a world not yours, against an army not your enemy. Elias met her stare without hesitation. I don't fight for empires, I fight for choices. You didn't bow to their crown, I won't bow to mine. That's reason enough. For the first time, something like warmth flickered in her proud eyes. She gave a slow nod, and without words, she accepted him not as a pawn, not as prey, but as an equal. The sky screamed as drop pods rained from the ships, slamming into the ground with explosions of fire and ash. Valorian soldiers emerged, armored in black steel, their weapons pulsing with violet energy. They marched with mechanical precision, their banners sharp against the storm. At their center stood a figure in regal armor, his helmet crowned with blades of silver, his eyes glowing with authority. Serenya's brother, his voice echoed across the wasteland, carried by amplifiers in his armor. Serenya valis, once my sister, now a stain upon our line. You were given a chance to serve the crown, and you spat upon it. I will erase you from our history. His gaze shifted to Elias, and his tone sharpened. And the human he will die as an example of what happens to vermin who trespass where they do not belong. Elias's lips twisted into a half-smile. That's the thing about vermin, hard to kill. The first wave surged forward. Serenya moved with deadly grace, her silver blade flashing arcs of brilliance, cutting through enemy ranks. Elias fought at her side, his movements rough, raw, but unrelenting. Where she struck like lightning, he fought like fire, burning everything he touched. Together, their rhythm clashed, then blended, until it became one storm tearing through the tide. But the Valorian army was endless. Each time they cut down one soldier, two more advanced. Elias's body screamed with exhaustion, every strike dragging blood from wounds that refused to close. Serenya saw him falter, and in a rare break of her mask, she shouted his name. The sound of it the first time she had spoken, Elias instead of human, was enough to pull him back from the edge. He surged forward, teeth bared, and hurled himself at another wave. Inside the citadel, the glyphs pulsed brighter, as though feeding on the battle. The hum grew to a roar, and suddenly the ground beneath the Valorian soldiers cracked. From the fissures rose more guardians. Ancient machines answering the fire awakened within Elias. They tore into the army with savage fury, their claws rending metal, their shrieks echoing like war horns of the dead. Chaos erupted. Serenya's brother roared in anger, his command struggling to hold formation as guardians and exiles clashed in a storm of steel and fire. Amid the chaos, Elias dragged Serenya against a crumbled wall, their faces inches apart, breath ragged. This isn't just a battle, he said, voice hoarse. This place sits, using us. She met his gaze, her expression fierce. No, not us. You. The citadel answers your fire, Elias Ward. It chose you. He wanted to deny it, but the truth burned in his veins. Every strike he made, every scream of defiance, the citadel pulsed brighter. He wasn't just fighting anymore, he was feeding it. Her brother's voice thundered again. Closer now, as he cut through his own men to reach them. You shame our bloodline, Serenya, and now you chain yourself to a human. Pathetic. When I kill him, you will watch. Serenya's face hardened. You will not touch him. She stepped forward, her silver blade rising, but Elias caught her. Arm no? He said, his voice raw but steady. He's mine. Her eyes widened, but she saw the fire in him, the unyielding defiance. She gave a single nod, her grip tightening on his hand for the briefest heartbeat before she released him. Elias stepped into the ruined courtyard, facing the prince alone. Around them, war raged, guardians and Valorian soldiers tearing each other apart. But in that moment, the battlefield narrowed to two men, one born of a crown, one carved from betrayal. The prince laughed coldly, raising his blade, its edge dripping with violet fire. You are nothing, human. Elias lifted his weapon, broken and battered, but his voice cut sharper than steel. Nothing is all I've ever been, and nothing is what's going to burn your crown. The citadel pulsed, brighter than ever, as if it held its breath. The duel had begun. Ash fell like snow across the battlefield, glowing embers carried by the howling wind. The citadel's glyphs blazed so bright they painted the sky green, their light pulsing with each heartbeat of Elias Ward. All around, chaos raged. Guardians shrieked as they tore through Valorian soldiers, sparks and metal flying, while Serenya's silver blade danced like lightning through the storm. But the heart of the war narrowed to one place, the ruined courtyard where Elias faced Serenya's brother, heir to the Valorian crown. The prince's armor shimmered with violet fire, his blade long and curved, forged from the heart of a dying star. He moved with the confidence of one who had never lost, each step steady, precise. Elias, by contrast, stood with a blade cracked and chipped, his body bloodied and barely holding. But his stance carried a weight no crown could grant, the weight of a man who had been betrayed, discarded, and yet still refused to kneel. You're trembling, the prince sneered, circling him. You should. No human has ever stood against a Valorian heir and lived. Elias spat blood into the dust, his lips curving into a half smile. Then I'll be the first. I'm good at disappointing kings. The prince's eyes narrowed, and he struck. His blade moved faster than lightning, a violet arc aimed to sever Elias in one blow. Elias barely caught it on his own weapon, the impact rattling through his broken ribs, sparks screaming into the air. He staggered, but did not fall. Again the prince came, strikes sharp and unrelenting. Elias's body screamed with every block, his arms numbing, but he met each blow with grit, sliding, countering with short, vicious jabs. He wasn't graceful, he was relentless. The difference between them was clear. The prince fought to prove dominance. Elias fought to survive, and survival had carved a fire deeper than any crown. The duel pushed them through the courtyard, shattering pillars and cracking stone. Serenya's gaze flicked to them between her own battles, her chest tightening each time Elias stumbled yet rose again. The citadel pulsed harder, feeding on his defiance, until even the guardians paused between strikes, as if waiting on his will. The prince's fury grew. You are a stubborn insect, he roared, his blade slamming Elias into a broken column. Elias's weapon splintered, the edge shattering, leaving him with barely half a blade. The prince raised his weapon for the final strike, but Elias did not cower. He lunged forward, ignoring the pain tearing through his chest, and drove the broken steel into the prince's shoulder joint. The crack of metal meeting flesh rang through the air, and for the first time, the Valorian heir cried out in pain. The shock rippled across the battlefield. Serenya's eyes widened. The guardians froze, their glowing eyes fixed on Elias. Even the citadel itself seemed to roar in approval, its glyphs blazing so bright the shadows fled. The prince staggered, fury twisting his face. You dare wound me? His voice shook with disbelief. You human filth dare touch royal blood? Elias grinned through the blood on his teeth. Guess your blood bleeds like mine. The words cut deeper than the blade. The prince's rage erupted, his strikes wild now, violet fire scorching stone, tearing through walls. Elias was thrown back, his body slamming into the ground, his vision blurred, darkness tugging at the edges. He could hear his heartbeat fading, slower, weaker. Serenya broke from her battle, rushing to his side, her hand grasping his face. For the first time, her voice trembled. Stay with me, Elias. Do not give him this victory. His lips moved, barely a whisper. Run, live. Her eyes flared, and she shook her head violently. No, I defied a crown once. I will defy death itself before I let it take you. She rose, her blade blazing silver, and threw herself against her brother. Their duel was a clash of light and fury, silver against violet, exile against air. Sparks rained, their strikes splitting the air with thunder. But even Serenya began to falter under his strength. He pressed her back, his voice a snarl. You chose shame. Now you choose a human. You are unworthy of our bloodline. Elias, half-conscious, dragged himself across the ground, fingers trembling, searching for anything. His hand pressed against a glowing glyph, and suddenly the citadel answered. Power surged into his veins, fire searing through his blood. His body jerked, his eyes blazing with emerald light. The guardians shrieked in unison, falling to their knees. The citadel itself roared, a sound like an army of ancient gods awakening. Serenya and her brother froze mid-strike, turning to see Elias standing, his broken blade glowing like a shard of living fire. The prince's face twisted in disbelief. Impossible. The citadel cannot choose you. Elias's voice thundered, no longer weak, but burning with something older, something vast. I didn't ask to be chosen. But if it wants fire, I'll give it fire. He surged forward, faster than before, his blade clashing with the prince's in an explosion of emerald and violet sparks. Each strike carried the weight of the citadel's power, his wounds forgotten, his body moving as though carved from flame. Serenya stumbled back, her eyes wide-not in fear, but in awe. The duel raged, stone splitting beneath their feet, the sky shattering with each clash, and at the height of the battle, Elias drove his blade through the prince's chest, emerald fire bursting outward in a shockwave that tore through the courtyard. The air screamed, his crown of blades shattering, his body collapsing in ruin. Silence followed. Then the citadel's glyphs flared once more, brighter than any star, and Elias collapsed to his knees. The power drained from him, leaving him trembling, broken, barely alive. Serenya rushed forward, catching him before he fell. His eyes flickered open, meeting hers. Guess I'm harder to kill than he thought. Her hand trembled against his cheek, her eyes wet, though no tears fell. She whispered fiercely, You are more than fire, Elias Ward. You are my equal. And for the first time since her exile, Serenya, valis bent not to kneel, not to beg, but to press her forehead to his, sealing a bond forged in fire and defiance. Above them, the Valorian fleet stirred, shocked and uncertain. Their heir had fallen, and now whispers of rebellion would spread like wildfire. Ash still rained from the sky, though the battlefield had gone quiet. The citadel stood scarred, but unbroken, its walls glowing like veins of emerald fire. Among the wreckage of fallen soldiers and shattered guardians, Elias knelt in Serenya's arms, his breath shallow, his body torn but alive. The Valorian heir lay dead, his violet crown extinguished, his blood seared into the black stone. And yet, the silence carried no peace. It was the stillness before a storm greater than any they had faced. Above them, the fleet hovered, engines growling. They did not retreat. They circled like carrion birds, waiting, uncertain. The fall of an heir had shaken their pride, but their loyalty to the throne chained them still. Every ship's cannon pointed downward, every shadow in the sky a reminder. That victory was far from complete. Serenya rose, still holding Elias close, her silver armor scarred, her face fierce. She looked to the heavens and shouted in her native tongue, her voice echoing like thunder across the wasteland. The heir is dead. His blood stains this ground. Who among you dares to claim his crown now? Her words struck like lightning. In the fleet above, commanders wavered. The shame of retreat warred with the terror of defiance. The citadel itself pulsed in answer, its glow spreading up through the spires until the whole ruin blazed like a beacon. Elias stirred, his voice hoarse but steady. They're not afraid of you, he whispered. They're afraid of this place, afraid of what it chose. Serenya looked down at him, her proud eyes softening. Afraid of you, Elias Ward, a soldier with no crown, no empire, Yet the citadel bends to your fire. He let out a rough laugh, though blood stained his lips. Never thought I'd scare an empire. The fleet began to descend, shuttles breaking. From the warships, soldiers forming new ranks. They would not accept exiles, defiance, or human fire. They would smother it before it spread. Serenya's hand tightened around her blade, but Elias caught her wrist weakly. Not this time, he murmured. We can't fight them all. Her jaw clenched. Then we die as fire. But before the soldiers could advance, the ground beneath the citadel shook violently. The glyphs blazed brighter, not just in the walls, but across the entire wasteland. Fissures opened, spilling green light, and from the depths rose something far greater than the guardians. Colossal figures of stone and steel emerged, their bodies shaped like titans, their eyes burning with the same fire that now burned in Elias. The citadel had not been merely a prison, it had been a beacon, waiting for its chosen flame to awaken. The old army, the Valorian fleet faltered. Panic rippled through their lines as the titans roared, their voices echoing like thunder across the stars. The commanders barked orders, ships shifting, but hesitation routed them. For the first time in centuries, the empire faced not submission, but rebellion born of fire. Elias struggled to his feet, Serenya supporting him. The titans turned their gaze to him, their emerald eyes bowing to his will. He felt their power hum in his blood, though it threatened to tear him apart. This isn't my fight, he muttered, his voice breaking. But damn it, maybe it should be? Serenya's hand slid into his, her grip steady, unshakable. Not alone, never alone. My exile, your scars, we burned together. Their bond sealed in that moment, not of crown and soldier, not of exile and stray, but of equals, bound by the same defiance. Elias raised the broken shard of his blade. The titans echoed the motion, lifting weapons carved from fire and stone. The Valorian fleet broke formation, fear unraveling their discipline. Above the chaos, Serenya's brother's death had left a vacuum, and in that void, new whispers began. Soldiers on the ground hesitated, some lowering their weapons, some kneeling to the crown, but to the fire that had toppled it. Rebellion had already begun. The fleet unleashed its cannons, violet fire raining down. The titans rose to meet it, their massive arms deflecting blasts, their roars shaking the very sky. The battlefield became a storm of light emerald against violet, fire against chain. Elias collapsed once more, the citadel's power threatening to consume him, but Serenya caught him, pressing her forehead to his. Hold, Elias. You lit this fire. You must not let it die. He forced his eyes open, staring at her, and whispered, Then keep me alive. Because I think we just started a war. And as the citadel's beacon flared across the stars, worlds-long silence stirred, chains rattled, fires lit. The story of a banished princess and a crash-landed soldier spread like wildfire to outcasts who refused to bow, whose fire had awakened. Titans and shaken an empire, they were no longer just survivors. They were the beginning of a storm that no crown could ever smother.